Hi everyone, and you are welcome to this lecture with keyword with files. In this lecture, we are going to understand what with keyword is and why it's very important in context of files. We will learn together with syntax and we will see some examples. And finally, I will end up this lecture by a quick summary. So let's get started. Firstly, let's understand what with is. With is a Python instruction that's used usually with unmanaged resources like files. And the main purpose of this instruction is to ensure that a resource is cleaned up when the code that uses it finishes running, even if exceptions are thrown. If you remember in a previous lecture, we see that we have to open a file, then we have to process what we want to do with the file, then we have to close that file. But sometimes during this processing of the file content, some exception could happen, and the function that closes the file will not be executed, and the file will be kept open. So with will help me in this issue. Let's see together now with syntax. It's quite simple. We say with, then we type the expression that we want, and this expression usually returns a value. You can assign it to a variable, so I say is variable, and I put two brackets here just to mention that this is optional. It's not a compulsory to say is a variable. It depends if you want to use this variable within the with body or not. And as I mentioned, usually, please don't forget the colon, otherwise you will get a syntax error. And after that, within the body of with, we will see statement or some statements. And as you see here, there is indentation. And this indentation will make the interpreter understand that this statement or block of statements belong to this with keyword. Now let's move to PyCharm IDE to see some examples to understand why with is quite important. The first example I want to share with you is how we can deal with a file without with keyword. First of all, let me assume that I have a file, it's named dummy, and it has the following content. Now, if I want to read this file from my Python program, I will use the following script. First of all, I have to specify the file path. Then I will open the file. Then I will check the status of the file. Within this object, we have an attribute, its name closed. And closed will give me true if the file is closed, otherwise it will give me false. Now let me comment this part first, and I will run now this part. As you see here, I get the file is closed false. Why false? Because when I execute this line of code, the file is still opened and has not been closed yet. So the main purpose of this example, just to understand what is the meaning of closed. Now let me remove this part and uncomment this part. As you see here, I'm using try except statement, and the code is very simple. I specify the path of the file, then I open the file using open function for reading, then I will read the content, then I will define a list, a equal to 1 to 4. After that, I want to get access to the element number 10 inside this list, and then I want to close this file. It's clear here from this part of the code, there is no 10 items inside the list A, and this part will throw an exception. Try will catch this exception, and once it happens, it will move the execution to the statement or block of statements within except. But the point here that this function, which is file.close, will not be executed because the exception happened before this function. Now after this try except, I'm printing here fo.closed, which is CLO here, in order to show you if the file is closed or not. So if I run, and let's see what is printed, it's false. Why false? Because here, even there is fo.close function, but this line has not been executed at all because of the exception that happened here. And this is a problem because now my program assumes that the file is closed, but actually it's not closed. The solution for this problem is by using with keyword. Let me show you how. First of all, I will remove everything. Then I will paste this snippet of code. As you see, I just defined the file path again, which is my file dummy.txt. And then I say with open file path as fo. And this is equivalent to say fo equal to open file path for reading. Here, just let me specify the mode, which is reading mode. Then within my file, I say try file content equal to fo.read. Then there is an exception will happen here. If exception happened, except will be executed, and then the body of except will be executed. After that, I will check what is the status of my file, which is fo, and then I will print this status. Let me run. As you see here, the status is true now. What is the meaning of this true? This means that the file is closed. And look here, there is no .close function at all. What is the meaning of that? The meaning is quite simple. With is responsible for closing the file directly from the first line after with. So even if a problem happens inside the body of with, it's not a problem. With is responsible to close the file. And here I just use try except because I want to show you this sentence printed. Otherwise, if I don't use this except here and try here, so if I run, you will see that there is an exception because I'm trying to get access to an element, number 10, and a list has only 3 elements. And that's all. So the takeaway from this code snippet that when you want to deal with files, it's highly recommended to use with keyword. Why? Because with guarantees closing the file even an exception happens while you are processing that file. And that's all for this code session. Now let's summarize what we have learned in this lecture. In this lecture, we have learned about with, and as we see, it's an important statement to clean up the unmanaged resources like files even if exceptions are thrown. We see some examples about that, and we learn about closed attribute, which will help me to know if the file is open or closed. And that's all. Now please refer to the file with keyword with files challenges, in which you will find some challenges to practice what you have learned in this lecture. Thank you very much for your time, and if you are available, join me in the next lecture.